You live? All right.
Yeah, we live as well.
All right. Hey, Shalom.
Shalom.
First and foremost, we want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakudash. We also want to give double honors to our apostles and the elders of Great Millstone that do rule well through the Holy Spirit. And we want to say peace, blessings, salutations, etc. Of course, as always, that are unto you elect, who are throughout the four winds of this earth, fulfilling your lots in all truth and all sincerity. We're the Hebrew Israelites, GMS Dallas, Great Millstone Dallas, coming to you all with another class session through the Holy Spirit in hopes that it's edifying unto the flock. And today's topic, and out of all the different stuff that we see happening in the earth, and something the Spirit likes to have me go into are different signs and events that we're seeing. And our Lord Yahweh Shai gave us warning within the scriptures of those signs and such to look out for, because seeing these signs I'd rather say, are disclaimers to show how close we are to our Lord coming back. Because a so-called Christian will say we're in the last days, and it's true. We are in the last days, but we've been in the last days ever since Yahweh Shai came on the scene. Even the Apostle John, Revelator, when you read his first epistle. Matter of fact, you know what? I can just read that really quick. In the book of 1 John, the 2nd chapter, I believe.
Can I get one for you?
God, that's the best one. You got it.
Yeah, this is just one quick one. This is St. Matthew 24 and 14. It says, "In this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come." Because you was talking about how we can measure when the end is coming. Now that the gospel has been spread, throughout the four corners of the earth, that's a major indication or a token that we're in the end times that the prophets of old spoke about.
Con. That's right. Beautifully put. And I'm looking.
I can get it for you.
Yeah. Okay. You got it.
Well, nah, what are you looking for?
Just going into many anti-messiahs shall come in that day.
Okay. That is.
Let's see. I'm trying.
Yeah. 18, 2 and 18.
The water. Yeah. 2 and 18. Yes, sir.
First John chapter 2 verse 18. Little children, it is the last time.
Now, and if I may, he said it is the last time, and when he's going into the last time, he's talking about the time frame that he was in. And this was roughly about 2,000 years ago. So it just goes to show you how close we are to the end. Because when Yahweh Shai came on the scene, and we don't got to get it, but even prophetically in Revelation, the 12th chapter, it goes into, the beast having 7 heads and 10 horns. It goes into the woman, and I'm pretty sure, especially you newer brothers, y'all should be aware of that breakdown, because y'all had to break it down to get here. So it goes into the nativity and birth of our Lord Yahweh Shai, but it signifies that to the time period of the final beast. You can read about in Daniel the 7th chapter. So when you go into the time frame of the fourth beast, in Daniel chapter 7, that right there shows you that was the start of the end. So we've been in the last days for 2,000 odd rough years.
So I was walking the earth. That was kind of the beginning.
That was the beginning of the last days.
That's right.
That's right. As the Apostle John said right here, little children, it is the last time.
And that fourth beast that Daniel talked about in Daniel 2.
That's right. That's right.
That's why we say we're in the last days of the last days now.
That's it.
Now we're at the tail end of the last days.
Which is why our fear of the Lord should really be heightened more than ever. And even as it was written in Baruch, going into how we went astray from the Lord and how we should seek the Lord 10 times more, since we see that we only have but a few mere nanomilliseconds to the very end. So this lesson is going to be held on conduct, mindset, but also too the focus in and narrow in on how close we actually are. So if those that are listening, of course, those that are taking heed, if you're doubting in your spirit, or if you're feeling unfervent or whatever, just use these times that we're in right now and see what's happening in the earth as motivation to build your faith. Because we're right here at the very end. It's a reason why there's so many crazy things happening on the earth. It's a reason why shit's getting more tacky. You can't even look on the back of ingredients without getting disappointed and frowning. When I look at the ingredients now, I'll be like, fuck. It's a lot more ingredients than it was 10 years ago. So if you look at this time that we're in according to the flesh, it's like, ain't gonna be nothing else left. But if you read it within the lens of hope, that should motivate you and gear you to being really fervent, because we see how close we are to the end. You got it, Elder. Shalom, brother. Y'all must break a thigh.
1 John chapter 2 verse 18. Little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist or anti-Messiah shall come, even now are there many anti-Messiahs of Christ.
And what's that going into? Because in Christianity, we came up to think that it was going to be one guy that was led with the Antichrist
Right.
that was going to come and identify himself as the Messiah.
Right.
Now, we obviously know the start of that goes into Esau, Edom, his rulership, him setting up a beast system and having the whole world to wonder after the beast system that we see right now. So in these last days, there are many anti-messiahs. Just as there was a way in the days of, John the Revelator, when he wrote this epistle, you had the ancient Romans that were in power. And even the Apostle Paul talked about the one that was coming whose workings were after Satan.
Right.
And then the times it was going to be existent, well, that's going into the Roman Empire, which is the empire of Idumea, in a sense.
Yeah.
So that's another indicator to show you as well that in the days of the Apostle John, Yahushua, the rest of them, that was the last days because Esau was in rule. But
captivity for Israel too, before the kingdom of heaven.
that's right.
You know?
That's right.
The Roman Empire pretty much, because America is an extension, of course. So
That's right.
back to your point.
Beautifully put. And also how it had to be a falling away that even had to happen. Satan had to be bound in prison, just as the prophecy said. And then he had to be let loose for what's called a short season, as you read about that in Revelation. So during this short season, there's a lot that's been happening. And a few things that are going to happen that's left that are going to change the whole tipping point in the fashion of the world right now. If that made sense how I was worded. Okay? You got a point, Tazama?
Well, I had a precept real quick.
Okay.
This is second John 7 earlier.
Go ahead.
Second John chapter 7 verse, Second John verse 7. It says, "For many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not that Yahushua Hamashiach is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an anti-Messiah."
Right, and that whole spirit is here. As you read it in Revelation, the 11th chapter, where it talked about the place that was spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, where they crucified the Lord. His ways are mocked, his messengers are mocked. Everything, the whole standard the Lord set up is mocked and frowned upon. And you have people that are with this agenda, whether it's right wing, whether it's left wing. We just had that, excuse of what's called a debate a few days ago, and you have people that's so spiritually invested, just that they're always been spiritually invested with this society, but all these people that are heavily invested within the forefront of the society and how things are going to be ran with in the near future, that just goes to show you how gone they actually are, and that they are anti-Messiah, just as we're reading about, because they're within this beast system. I mean, they just went and rolled their sleeves up 4 years ago to get their juice. They've made their allegiance to who, who we know was the devil. They've made their allegiance clearly. They're against Yahushua.
Well, if I just may add on to that point real quick, because you can have a lot of people that would think that with that verse is saying that, you got a lot of people who just don't confess, that Yahushua even existed. You know what I'm saying? But realistically, when you go deep into that verse, I'll read it again. It says, "For many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not that Yahushua Hamashiach is come in the flesh." You have Israelites that believe in Yahushua, who the world calls Jesus, but they don't truly confess him. You see what I'm saying? Their whole mindset and their motive is about pretty much their own belly. You see, the thing about it, the difference with us is that Yahushua is on the forefront of our ministry. And these other guys, these other groups out here, they don't put Yahushua in the forefront of their ministry. They may throw Yahushua in there a little bit here and there just to say, "Oh yeah, Yahushua." You know what I'm saying? But they're not truly confessing Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, not truly confessing what he died for, not confessing his walk, they're not confessing what he stood for.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And with that makes a major difference in who is telling the truth and who truly is a deceiver.
That's right.
Just laying back on my
They're not ashamed of Yahushua. Like the humility and the stead that he would come in, they want to be exalted on this side. But he going to be ashamed at them too.
Exactly.
When when he's being glorified.
When you don't exalt Yahushua, what you end up doing is making it seem like you could do it yourself. All right, so a lot of them, they move in a way to where it's saying as though we don't need Yahushua.
Right.
That's what you're saying when you say keep the law perfect. You don't need that sacrifice.
That's right.
You see?
That's right. It's all a do as thou wilt doctrine at the end of the day, in one way, form, or fashion. And ultimately, just as Yahushua said in John 8:44, they follow after their father, the devil. As he does, he was a liar from the beginning. They're following that same stead because they are within the vibration of this system here. Esau tells you to jump. Jake says how far. Not even just Jake, but the rest of the world. Right. And again, we saw that 4 years ago. The nigga said, put that mask on them gloves and, And Jake, you know, looking like Patrick from the episode of SpongeBob when he had the suds. You know what I'm saying? They had the gloves on, the mask, and, you know, I still work with Jake that's like that to this day.
Man, me too.
You know? I'm like, damn, bro.
Too bad. I'm talking. There's a lady at my job that wears two of them hoes.
Yeah, bro.
It was
Face
so,
all tight.
it's so bad that they in a car by themselves with it on.
Mhm.
Like, there's no one in there with you. That's it.
You in the
Yeah.
car by yourself?
By yourself with the windows up and you got your mask on. What are you
That's
doing?
wild right there.
Mhm.
That's really programming. When you
That's
go to
programming.
That, golly,
That's it.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Go ahead, bro. About the show.
Back in 1 John chapter 2 verse 18. Little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that anti-Messiah shall come, even now are there many anti-Messiahs, whereby we know that it is the last time.
Whereby we know, not the whole world, that this letter right here is exclusive to the church, whereby we know it's the last time because we can visually see that there are many anti-messiahs in the world. Now they can't say that. They still think it's one antichrist, and they'll say it. But we know that it's many, you know, and we know it's tacky as well. As the scriptures do say, the elect shall not be deceived by Satan's devices. So it's clear as day, okay? But those are indicators that it's the end. We can go to that Romans chapter 12, Baba Kashaw, and we can start at verse 11. Okay, is it quick? Which one is it?
The second is not. But,
Okay. Yeah, let's read that one first really quick, and we can go to the precepts.
12 to 13.
Verse 11, and read Romans chapter 13, verse 11 and 12, excuse me.
Come. Romans 13, verse 11. And that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to wake out of sleep.
Just as the Apostle John the Revelator identified the time, what we just read earlier in 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. He said, little children, it is the last time. The Apostle Paul says, know that therefore it's in the last times. So they're identifying the times and what will be transpiring in these times. Go ahead, Ak.
For now is our salvation nearer than when we believe.
Go ahead.
The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Then therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light.
And just as you made mention earlier, Tazama, a little bit ago, just going into the other groups that are out here, they're not moving and operating like it's the last times. Because it's a way that you got to handle yourself, especially knowing how close we are to the end. You know, you can't just be invested in the world. I mean, it's never good to be invested in the world. But how much more that we're at the very end? I mean, I'm going to just use a few examples. You know, you have the Sicarii, which they've been a very prominent group within the world of Israel now within the past, 10, 11 years. You know, but here at the very end, the very, very end, their leadership just splits up out of nowhere. Now, granted, if they disagree, they disagree. But knowing that we're all to the end, how close we are to the end, like if I got to alt with my brother and a disagreement with my brother, then I'm going to do what's in the best in my ability to make sure that that's rectified, you know? But you got guys that are just willing to just split up. It's a disagreement here, disagreement there. So in the end of the world, you're going to split up. And not only did they split up, but they started a whole new name brand, a whole new group, all these different theatrics that's tied to it. You know, you have, what's his name? Tazariak. They're on the No Jumper podcast. You know, a lot of these groups sitting down with known heathen, by the way. And these are guys that are hell-bent on the law. The law this, the law that. And they'll even go above and say that they're perfect in the law. But they'll sit down on a No Jumper podcast with whatever that guy's name is, Adam 22.
Whack 100, he said I
Yeah,
talked to him too.
Whack 100, Tariq Nasheed. Now, if you're perfect in the law, and you know that we're at the very end, you would have definitely considered that wasn't the wisest thing to do, because according to the law, that was a crucial violation of the law. Because you ain't supposed to sit down with the heathen, as the scriptures say.
I was about to get that for you. 2 Corinthians 6.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. You can get it, you know, real. It ain't, you know, a big deal
Oh, yeah.
if it's brought out or not.
Yeah, don't worry, bro.
You know what I'm saying? But just, you know, these are indicators in your mind, like with us being believers, we know what we're supposed to do and we're not supposed to do. Romans chapter 2 goes into even the members in our body so that we still keep the law to the best of our ability.
Right.
But you got Jake that's just all out, don't give a damn. Willy-nilly, if you can hold actually, Matthew 13, to him that hath not shall be taken away.
Yeah.
We can go into that one right there. But you got guys that aren't moving like we're at the very end. Just as the scripture the brother just brought out in Romans chapter 13, verses 11 and 12, it went on to casting off the darkness and putting on the light and such. And seeing where we're at, you should be quick to do it. As the scriptures say, you should throw it away like it's a menstruous rag. And you got brothers that are coming in just as we came in, just as elder brothers have came in, that were really quick to put off the world. Jake stopped getting lineups. Brothers used to have dreadlocks. I used to have that bullshit in my head. That's something that I plucked out, because we know the grave importance of serving the Lord. And how can I put it here? If you show forth that you're that eager to cut off the world and cut off those things, like, it's gonna come with a great reward, bro. You know what I'm saying? You got Jake, especially in these other camps, that can't even stop themselves from getting a lineup. Jake still popping their wives on the Sabbath, and they pushing all this stuff. They're pushing it. They're saying that they're doing it.
They hell bent the law.
They're hell bent on the law. And the thing is, closer at the end, let's say, for example, it's lawful, which we know it's not. You should still be kind of like, man, I don't know, man. You should have that thought in the back of your mind, at least like, ew, it is kind of yucky. Let me just stay away from it just in case. And you got Jake that's not even in that spirit.
If I can say, they don't have all bases covered, and they think they do, but they really don't. That's
Yeah.
the whole purpose of us needing to have a shot.
That's it.
There's no way possible in so many aspects that we can do it, perform the duties of that law.
That's
that whole
right.
covenant, pretty much.
That's right, bro, because he covers all those bases that we can't cover.
That we don't even know exist by like what they would call in the church sins of omission.
Right.
Things that we ain't even intending to do, but we just do it just because for one we in this sinful flesh.
That's right. Well, you had an ignorance offering.
Right.
You had certain sins of ignorance
Right.
that were done in the ancient world, and there were certain offerings and such that were done toward those sins of ignorance. And Yahweh Shai, just as you're going into, he covers all of that.
That's right.
So you got Jake that are this hell bent on the law, and you notice they don't really push Yahweh Shai neither. Well, that's where the Apostle Paul talked about, if you're adapted to this law, you're adapted to all of them. If you broke this one, you broke all of them, because they're omitting Yahweh Shai. So that's the wrong spirit to be in, especially since we're at the very end. But as we're getting ready to read in Matthew the 13th chapter, it just goes to show you that it's already set in stone that there's guys that are going to be getting worse the closer we get to the end. Because somebody's going to have to play a part as a wicked. Somebody's going to have to be a wicked Israelite. Somebody's going to have to be a righteous Israelite. And all these things have to fall in their stead within the very last moments of these last days. You got it, bro.
This is Matthew 13. I'm going to start at verse 11 and the point is verse 12.
And then you can bring that second Ezra 9 now.
It says, he answered and said unto them, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given.
Right, talking about those that are without. And Yahweh Shai was namely pointing at those wicked scribes and Pharisees when you go into this verse. Guys that knew that they were Israelites, the world of Israel, as you will. All right, he wasn't talking about the rest of the world. That wasn't exclusive. It's never been exclusive to the rest of the world. You got it, bro.
Right, verse 12, it says, for whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance.
So if the Spirit of the Lord is within you, you're only going to grow more. You're going to get on more of a level, just as you can read about that in the scriptures where the Apostle Paul wrote his letter talking about those that said the Apostle Paul planteth, Apollo watereth, but the Lord gives the increase. So the more that you endure, the more that you're showing a brother, keeping the laws to the best of your ability, loving the Most High with all your heart and your soul and your neighbor as yourself, fulfilling the law, you're only going to grow. The more you separate yourself from this world, cast off the flesh, the Spirit is only going to deal with you more on that level. Go ahead.
If I can say this, I would say you get dividends out of that. So anyone knows about a savings account, anything like that, you save with your money. Like my bank, every month you have money in there, they pay out dividends, you get extra. So when you storing up your treasures in heaven, that's what happens. You get paid dividends, and the more you store up, the more dividends get paid out. You increase in the spirit. And those spiritual riches continue to increase.
That's right.
Compounded interest.
Yeah, compound interest.
Solid point. That's that earnest of our expectation. I know that's something you'd like to talk about.
Yeah.
How the Lord gave us that down payment through the Holy Spirit, and you're only going to grow until we're made perfect in that natural image of Yahweh Shai when we're changed.
Right.
So in the meantime, we get those quick dividends. I like that analogy that you used, bro. That was beautiful. And it also, those dividends does enhance your faith as well.
Right.
And the scriptures say the Lord rewardeth him that diligently seeks him. When you read that in Hebrews the 11th chapter. So you can look at those rewards here as dividends that you get. And that's only going to increase your faith as well. By the time you do hit more tribulation, more affliction and such, you got the faith to be able to endure that. You know what I'm saying? Because that dividential payment that you talked about. Solid point, brother.
You got to store your treasures in heaven.
That's
why
right.
the scriptures say that. Because
Mhm.
we're looking to get those dividends, man.
That's
You
right.
know, the payout's going to be way more greater than what you put in.
Mhm.
That's why Yahweh Shai said, he said, like, you know, if you flipped the talent, you know, you pretty much was a manager. You was pretty much dealing with this little thing. You know, you're gonna be faithful over 10 cities now. I'm
Right.
gonna give you 10 to be over 10 cities, which that's just he's just throwing. It's just an example, of course.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? But the greater, you know, it's gonna be a greater reward and a greater payout at the end of the day when it's all said and done. That's it.
That's right. And the focal point of this lesson is like to really, for the audience that's listening, to really, the points that's being brought out is just to show you that we're even closer than we even believe. You know, that was Romans 13:11, what was just read. For your salvation is nearer than you even believe. So when you look at the Apostle Tahar and Demon every year, the year of such and such, the year of such and such, and we hope for a lot of these things to happen. But just know that the Lord is going to pick us up even sooner than all of that. You know, you have a mindset, Lord, I hope the Lord comes back soon. Well, just know the Lord is going to come back sooner than that.
Right.
According to what the Apostle Paul wrote in Romans 13, the 13th chapter. You know? Did you have something you was holding, brother? Or
I was finishing up the
you was
verse.
okay, cool.
Matthew 13:12, it says, for whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. It says, but whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath.
Right, because we're in the last times. So these guys have to get worse. They have to, and it's even moments, because we're in the flesh. So you had those moments where you see one of these groups do some dumbass shit, excuse my French, some idiotic stuff. And you're like, man, that's some bullshit, isn't it? It's wicked. But it's like, yo, the Lord doing it. You know, to him that not shall be taken away even that which he hath. You know?
2 Timothy 3. That's pretty much what this 2 Timothy the 3rd chapter talks about.
Yeah.
It talks in the beginning, perilous times shall come. Members shall be lovers of themselves, and they go down a list
Yeah.
of all these things that these other guys are doing.
Mhm.
And then by the time you get to the end of the chapter, it says what? Evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse.
Yeah.
So it's written in the perilous times and last time that this is going to happen, like the priest is going into.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot of these guys that started groups really just out of spite because they wanted to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to Wisdom of Solomon, the first chapter, in the 4th verse, it says, what? Wisdom shall not enter a malicious soul.
soul.
Right.
Right? And you look up the word malicious, it talks about being spiteful.
Mm.
Doing it to get back at somebody, doing it for ill will, doing it
Yeah.
for reasons that aren't genuine. So, you know,
Yeah.
the wisdom can't stay with somebody that's has malicious intent.
That's beautiful, because when you look at the world right now, I mean, you read it in 2 Ezra 5, which we're going to pull up here in a minute, but it goes into how many shall be taken in great number in that day. And that great number goes into the mass state of confusion that's here. And it goes into the state of the world. I like that 2 Timothy 3 that was just brought out because it mentions the perilous times. And it gives all the examples of the spirits that's on people that leads up to the perilous times. So wisdom's not going to enter into that.
Right.
And it shows you that wisdom is only dealing with a certain group of people, because everybody else that's out here were programmed to be perilous, programmed to hate the Lord, hate his ways. We just read earlier as the Apostle John gave that indicator, look, we're in the last times. Don't you see all these anti-messiahs floating around? Come on now, man. And that's only for us to get, because the rest of the world, they're still looking, you know, to get their full payout of their 401k in 15 years. You know, which if it goes on 15 years, that's the Lord's timing. But the way these prophecies looking, it probably ain't going to happen that way. But you got a so-called Christian that'll say, yeah, I can't wait to see my golden years. You know, happy birthday. And in their happy birthday song, that little ad-lib and many more. You know, we ain't looking for that shit, bro. According to biblical prophecy, it's a wrap. You know, and the Bible is so detailed that it even identifies how close we actually are, which is the focal point of this lesson. These signs that were written of here weren't just willy-nilly, just for no reason. Those signs that are written there are for us, and we have the eyes to be able to see it. As you read it in, I believe that's in Matthew 13 as well, or Matthew 15. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it talks about how there's many great men, many kings.
Matthew 13.
Matthew 13, the water. Many great men that desire to see the things that we see.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
It's actually it's further down.
Well, let's go on and read it. Let's.
It's right there.
That's the
same
spirit.
thing.
Like, as you read down and he goes into it. It says Matthew 13 and verse 16. It says, I'm gonna start at verse 16 and point to 17. It says, but blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them.
So he said all this to that small cluster of brothers that he pulled to the side. Because remember, the first question that was posed was, why you speak unto them in parables?
Right.
And he says, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but unto them it is not given.
Right.
So he further expounds on, look, y'all are blessed. To him that hath shall be given more abundance. To him that hath not shall be taken away. And by the way, many great men desire to see the things that you brothers see. You know, so just as Yahweh Shai was speaking to that small group of brothers, those remnant that were there present, it's the same thing that applies to us. You know, so he's telling them personally, like, look, man, the stuff that y'all getting ready to see, a lot of great people gonna desire to see it, and they can't even see it. You know, so just goes to show you how blessed we actually are. You know, go ahead, brother. I know you got something
no,
heavy.
it's just
you
that
know?
at the same time, it's beautiful because those great men are seeing it because they coming back in the reincarnation anyway. That's what Yahweh Shai said. He said, "Ye that follow me in the regeneration,
That's
when
right.
the Son of Man shall sit on the throne, you shall, you 12, you're going to sit and judge the 12 tribes of Israel." But those great men like Abraham, Isaac, of course, Yahweh Shai's Isaac, Jacob, King David, Peter. You know what I'm saying? Them being back in the reincarnation, those great men that seen those things or that heard about the Messiah, they seen the Messiah, and they're going to see him again and hear these great things today, which is going to ultimately prompt them to wake up through the Spirit. It's going to be that spiritual tapping on the head because the spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets anyway. See what I'm saying?
God, I got a precept real quick. This is Matthew chapter 8, verse 11. I actually read this earlier today. And just to go into it, how Yahweh Shai pretty much said those brothers are going to be back. But it says in verse 11, "And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and the west," which is really talking about the diaspora, the Israelites that were scattered. Okay? But it says, "And shall sit down with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob in the kingdom of heaven." Just to go to show you that those spirits are going to be back and they're going to still take heed to their fathers. You know, you can also read that in 2nd Ezra, the first chapter. We don't got to get it, but it talks about that. How those men will be leaders for the people. You know, just wanted to bring that out. I read that earlier
That's
today.
heavy. It's crazy when you was reading it. I was looking at this Matthew 13.
Jake, don't know what that is?
I'll give you that. Well, I was looking at this Matthew 13, you know what I'm saying, where we just read about the mystery, that we read about blessed are the eyes,
Gotta
they
probably
see
lock
and
the door
hear.
on that, too.
You know what I'm saying? And then I'm looking at the page number is 1440.
Hey, let's get it.
You know what I'm saying? That's
Let's
heavy,
get it.
bro.
Call Allah Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai.
Oh, Lord, y'all about to know what's up.
God, beautiful, beautiful. That's a bet. So, you got that 2nd Ezra 9 you wanted to bring out?
Oh, come on.
Okay. If if it's on your spirit to bring it out still.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bring it out real quick. Just backing up the times that we're in and the signs. 2nd Ezra chapter 9, verse 1. "He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself." Which, when we was talking about these other Israelite camps that aren't paying attention, they're not measuring the times.
Right.
They're still focused on filling their bellies and doing what they want to do. Okay? "And when thou seest part of the signs pass, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that at the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world,"
And that uproars also goes into protests when you break that word down. So not only is it just uproars, but it's protests. So this whole, my P word, my choice, all that stuff that we actually physically can see when we're out there preaching, especially in downtown Dallas. You always had them protests walking around, affirmative action. All that stuff was listed within prophecy because all of it calls protests and uproars and such. So these are all identifiers for us being believers to see how close we actually are. So Yahweh Shai said what? It was through the Holy Spirit, the angel saying this to Ezra. But Yahweh Shai still embodies the word. And he actually repeated this when you read it in books like Mark 13, Matthew 24. But he said to measure thou the time diligently. And when you break that word measure down, it literally means to calculate. So the Lord has given us enough spiritual discernment and understanding of these prophecies, which is the testimony of our Lord Yahweh Shai. So we have this testimony to be able to calculate. Look outside, calculate. That's happening right now. Calculate it. Wars in the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, Hamas, Palestine. You know what I'm saying? Israel. We're able to see these things and calculate it and find it within the scriptures. And seeing that is going to move you in fear to be like, man, I got to get a little sharper on X, Y, and Z. Because the Lord clearly is not playing right now. These things are happening. Yeah. Just as the prophets yearn for the day of the Lord to come, you know, what did Habakkuk say? I've heard thy speech of the Lord and was afraid. You know, the reason why he was afraid, because he knew what time it was. You know, what did King David say? It is now time for thee, O Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. So we're literally right here at the very end of what the Lord is doing, a very magnificent working that's taking place. And again, we can identify it because we blessed. We read it earlier in Matthew 13. Our eyes are blessed, so we can see these things. So that should mean for us to lock, excuse my French, lock the fuck in.
Yeah.
You know, because we that close.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like we always bring out, you know, when you a kid, your parents be like, hey, this such and such and such is going to be done before I get home.
Right.
Dad's about to pull up in the driveway. And if this house ain't clean, them dishes ain't washed, that carpet ain't vacuumed.
Your ass.
That's your ass. That's what's happening. Pops is about to pull up in the driveway.
Is that roast thawed out in the sink? Remember that? You remember
What you
that? Make sure that roast was taken out of the freezer and put in the sink by the time mom get home. To put in the crock pot. You know?
Or that you hear, you know what I'm saying, you over here bullshitting, playing the game, all of a sudden you hear that garage door opening up.
You trying to rush it. You know, well, that's the parable in Matthew 25. The 10 virgins, 5 wise, 5 foolish.
Right.
You know, the 5 foolish virgins heard that sound.
Right.
Oh snap, we gotta hurry up and do this. You know, but the wise ones, they was already getting to it. As soon as Pops left.
Lord,
I'm holding it right now.
Yeah.
Finish up.
We'll finish up and the Spirit want that out. That's cool.
All right, now back to verse 3. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. For like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest.
The end is manifest. And again, you got to have a special set of eyes to actually understand that. Because everybody sees it. Even the so-called Christian will say, yeah, Jesus is coming back soon. But again, they're going to talk about that 401k and their 15-year plan. You know, so nobody else is convinced. A Muslim is not convinced. They don't even believe in Yahweh Shai anyway. The small hat is not convinced. You know, because if everybody was convinced, people would shut down the bullshit they was doing and really get back. You know, so the scriptures, I'd rather say it makes sense why the scriptures talks about our Lord Yahweh Shai coming back as a thief in the night. You know, and even this is a scripture that I like to quote. But in 1 Thessalonians 5, the Apostle Paul makes mention pretty much saying, look, I don't got to tell you of these signs and such like that. For yourselves shall know perfectly that the day of the Lord shall cometh as a thief in the night. And the reason being is because they were able to measure the times diligently.
Yeah.
You know, if you ain't able to measure the time diligently, you're going to live your life as a niggard. You know, and then when the time the Lord comes back, it's going to be, you're going to be one of the ones weeping and gnashing your teeth. You know, but again, we've been given understanding. So we know how to conduct ourselves. We know the stuff that we ought to be doing. You know,
Well,
we have all these warnings. It's all good. We have all these warnings here in the scriptures to pretty much, reel us back in. Even when we do tend to veer off a little bit, you got brothers that are around you to hold you accountable, and you have prophecy to enhance your faith and reel you back in. You know, go ahead, Tosh.
Yeah, well, just what you were saying maybe it sparked a point in my mind, like what the Apostle Peter said. He said that one day with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. He says, but he said as some men count slackness. See, so men will count slackness in the fact that thinking that, well, there's still more time to, we still got more time. We still got more time to just chill out and just do what we need to do, and that's what you see these other camps doing. You see them building up their brand, building up their logo. It's about the community. You know what I'm saying? We going over here. We going to Smyrna, as Nate said, it was really Smyrna, right? We going over here, we going here, we going there, we going everywhere. 12 tribes worldwide. We gotta wake up our brothers and sisters, clean the communities up.
Right.
When it's really, realistically, it ain't time. It ain't time for all that.
Yeah, right.
You know, if anything, they should be telling them about the laws, statutes, and commandments.
Yeah, right.
But hey, you gonna stop the violence.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Wow.
Stop the Lord's program.
Wow. You telling everybody to keep the Lord's laws, statutes, and commandments, but you gonna stop his plan. You gonna stop.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that goes into Luke the 12th chapter. When you read it, you got that example of that that we don't got to get it. It's all good. But that rich man, when pretty much he had a mindset of planting and all this fruits and all this vineyard, and he had so much he couldn't even store it in his storehouse. So he made a plan of extending his storehouse, and then once he had that plan, Yahweh Shai continues in that parable to say that he was eating and drinking and giving and being made merry when he thought to do that. And in the midst of that, he, the Spirit told that man, thou fool, don't you know that your time is required right now? So he called him a fool going into that. And you got a lot of foolish guys within that spirit, because we clearly, or if you're an Israelite, you should know that we're in the last times. There's ample scriptures that talks about the last times, what's going to be done in the last times. Look out for what's happening in the last times. But you got Jake that's not getting it. But again, we explain why. Because of them that hath not shall be taken away, which that they hath. So while they're filling their belly within the world, their soul is being eaten away to the point where they're in space, lost in the sauce, not able to see what's happening because they're so busy of focusing on their self, their brand, what they want, their storehouse,
Building.
Building.
We need to build this, build.
Yeah. Well, the Lord is going to
Lord
destroy
gonna
it.
throw it down.
Yeah. Lord going to throw it down.
I was saying, what about the curse? We talked about our storehouses being cursed.
Right.
So until the Lord comes back, your storehouse ain't gonna be what you want it to be. That's what I'm saying. You under the curses.
That's right.
Yeah. And the thing is, you breaking the law, statutes, and commandments in the process.
Right.
And the fact that you're doing all this wickedness with your fringes on, with the Bible, all that's gonna add up. All that's gonna catch up to you.
Right. That's right, brother. You can pull that set. That was the second Ezra 9.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, that was it? Okay. Cool. Matter of fact, read that last verse one more time. Matter of fact, was you holding something?
I had that blessed when the Lord come find doom.
Okay. Let's bring that out, and then we can bring that out, and then segue to second Ezra 5.
Actually, there is one more verse.
Cool.
Okay, I'm going to read verse 5 again. For like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest, even so the times also the highest have plain beginnings in wonders and powerful works and endings in effects and signs.
Yeah, endings and effects. And I'm going to say this, nuclear warheads, that's a crucial work, bro. Never ever existed in history.
Right.
So crucial that it was talked about way before, thousands of years prior. It was spoken about.
Yeah.
So that nuclear bomb was written up within the scriptures. That's to happen, bro. That's a great work for your ass.
That's a transition of power too.
That's a transition.
In Isaiah in 9, after the fuel of fire, it talks about Yahweh's kingdom, right? Immediately
That's
after.
right.
That's right. 6. Right. Yep.
And it just goes to show you why the Lord had to wait for the end for all things to be manifested, because let's say if it was like a lot of so-called Christians will try to say that the end technically, was when the Roman Empire was on the scene and that was it. I've heard so-called Christians say that. They try to make that argument and such. Well, knowledge ain't been increased yet after that time. The beast wasn't let out for that short season.
Right.
As you go into that. And again, Daniel 12 says knowledge had to be increased. So there was a lot more things that had to happen and sped up during that short season that Esau got out of the picture, that the beast was let out of prison. This man had to level up in technological advances.
Right.
We had to have 4 industrial revolutions, to the point where they actually got military grade weaponry and missiles and shit out that's able to literally decimate a whole country. So the Lord had to give Esau and allow him to open up that arsenal so we could be able to make all these things.
You see, I created the smith that blowed the coals.
Mm-hmm.
And now you see how that played out.
Right.
See, that's what people don't understand about the scriptures. It gives a blueprint or a synopsis that's written down back then, but it's supposed to be explained today.
Right.
You see, just like how when the disciples that was reading the scrolls, they was reading the Old Testament. So when Yahushua came on the scene, they knew that it was talking about him based on what was written.
Right. Solid
Same thing
point.
with us.
Solid
We
point.
telling you that the Lord is coming based on the scrolls.
That's right.
And we telling you what to look for in the process of
That's
that.
right.
The wars and the rumors of wars, we seeing it play out. Every time we see all this action that's going on in the Middle East. You see, we seeing the technology increase to the point to where we went from the one phone that you had in the house with the rotary to you got a phone in your pocket.
Right.
We seen when the technology increased to where everybody thought the computer was the mark of the beast. Having a computer was having the mark of the beast. Not everybody got a computer. We seen, well, maybe my dog can get some lamb. Yeah, you see? So now you got all this stuff in your pocket when it was hell to get it in your house.
Right.
So we seen that technology increase. And it's based on the scriptures, is how we able to tell these things. Oh, this is what the scriptures was talking about, with the smith being blown in the coal and the fire and it being hot and not
Exactly.
blown. That gotta be
Yeah.
talking about nuclear destruction.
Yeah.
It's only one thing that can make your tongue and your eyeballs melt in your
Right.
head.
Yeah.
That's nuclear destruction. Oh, that's what the Lord was talking about. And he's hitting us real time.
Yeah,
You see?
beautiful point. The end had to come in order for the Apostle John the Revelator to understand what that grasshopper was with the stinger in the back.
Right.
You know, a lot of these
right.
prophecies that was explained to our forefathers, they wouldn't have thoroughly known it unless the Lord would have made the end manifest.
Right.
You know, so these things had to happen. You know, solid ass points, brothers. Y'all make some great points, man. Was you gonna say something?
No.
I thought you was gonna say something. Okay. You got something?
Luke 12.
Cool. Let's bring that out and we can jump to that 2 Ezra 5.
This is the book of Luke, chapter 12. I'll start at verse 42. It says, "And the Lord said, Who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom his Lord shall make ruler over his household, to give them their portion of meat in due season?" Right, and the steward is in that word steward, when you get it in the Greek, is oikonomeni, or excuse me, it's
I was about to say, it ain't there.
it's not oikonomeni, but it's kind of similar to that. But pretty much a steward is a faithful slave, for lack of better words, that will be given the reins, pretty much to be the master over a household for the master. You know,
Manager.
yeah, the manager of a household. You know what I'm
You know
saying?
what I mean?
Yeah, it's not oikonomeni. It's like it's a similar Greek word, but you know.
Somebody holding it just
Verse 43, it says, "Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing." You see, in the when you read that, the steward, his job was to what? His job was to give the other servants their portions of meat.
Right.
So when you think about it spiritually, what's our job to be stewards of this word? Our job is to what? Distribute the meat.
That's right.
To the rest of the people, which is what? This word. And so the Lord said, "Blessed is he when his Lord comes, find doing what he told him to do at the end of the day," versus you trying to make it about yourself. You know what I'm saying? You over here doing what the Lord said.
That's
What
right.
did the Lord, Yahweh Shai said? He said, "My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to what? Finish the work."
That's right.
You see, not playing, not sitting on your hands, not twiddling your thumbs. You know what I'm saying? Not trying to make the truth about yourself. You know, the Lord gave us a specific set of instructions.
He's our husband,
Okay,
so we got to make sure the house is kept until our husband gets back. You know, just talking about being a keeper or a manager of the house. You know,
Yeah.
we have to look over the affairs of the house.
The word is oikonomos, so the brother, you know,
It was a
listeners out there,
specific term, you know what I'm saying?
for the listeners, just so you know what we're talking about. It's G3623. I want to read up.
He almost said oikonomeni, man. Y'all stop. No, I'm fucking with you. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. God. So yeah, beautiful points. And then even like y'all made mention that stewardship. I keep alluding back to Romans the 13th chapter, but that's also what the Apostle Paul was saying. Since we're that close to the end, our salvation draws nearer than we believe. Therefore, you cast out the darkness, and they're being made an example. You know, that way those that come and believe look at your walk and look at how you move and see that's how to serve the Lord. You know what I'm saying? So that stewardship is definitely key here in these last days, because Yahweh Shai is looking for a prepared army when he comes back. You know what I'm saying? That's what Ezekiel chapter 37 is pretty much talking about. You know, that army that's being raised up before he makes his return. You know, and it's all in the Lord's programming. You know, it ain't just of our own will, which we obviously know, but just generally saying it still. This ain't of our own will that we just decided to just wake up out of nowhere. Brothers just meet up on YouTube and come to downtown Dallas or wherever you come to. You know, random brothers, you know, new brothers coming in and such. It's all part of the Lord's program. You know, and the reason why the Lord's doing this, because as the Apostle Paul stated, the salvation is nearer than we believe. So it's the reason why time is speeding up the way that it is right now. It's the reason why brothers are coming up on a higher level than brothers that was 10 years before that, 20 years before that. You know, Jake comes in, they always come in at a higher level than brothers around that time, because, you know, knowledge and wisdom is being increased. The Lord is speeding a lot of these things up because we are that close. You know, it's the standard, you know. But we can bring that 2 Ezra 5 out. That was it on that, Tazama?
Yeah.
We gonna not segue, but just go into this in 2 Ezra 5 and start at the top and read to verse 3, and then you can jump to around verse 43 afterward, and we'll just read down from there. And we can end it off in 2 Ezra 14. You got it, Kevin.
2 Ezra chapter 5 verse 1.
Enrique, you can hold 2 Ezra 14, brother. Cool.
Nevertheless, as coming the tokens, behold, the day shall come that they which dwell upon the earth shall be taken in a great number.
Now they that dwell upon the earth shall be taken in a great number. Now what that's talking about, you know, in a sense, we really touched up on it. You know, you really broke it down in 2 Timothy 3. Perilous times shall come, men shall be lovers of themselves. All the different traits that it was read about that would be in the spirit of man that would cause those perilous times. That's also what 2nd Ezra 5:1 is talking about, where it said men shall be taken in great number. That's going into mass confusion. You know what I'm saying? And under this beast system, this anti-Messiah system, you have a lot of people that are now anti-Messiah. You know, they follow the spiritual demon Satan, and they're taken in great number. Because you follow in the ways of Babylon. What does Babylon mean? It means confusion. You know, so you follow in the ways of Babylon. Well, the fruit of that is you're gonna be a babbler. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna have that same confusion that's pushed within Babylon and also the different nations that are aligned with Babylon. So as the scriptures say, many shall be taken in great number. Mass hysteria, mass delusion, mass confusion. That's what that's talking about. And that is going to segue to a destructive end.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The kingdom divided itself shall not stand. You know, all these are fruits to an unsuccessful kingdom.
Yep.
You know?
Look at the
They're
nation of
blinded by
Israel.
the God of this world. That's how I'm just going to add. So like,
You say it again?
they're blinded by the God of this world, like it says in 2 Corinthians. That's
Mhm.
why our gospel is hid to them.
That's right.
You know, which is that the God of this world is what? Satan.
Hmm.
You know? So ultimately, that's why he's going to have to die.
That's right. That's it.
Verse 5, verse 1. Nevertheless, as coming the tokens, behold, the days shall come that they will which dwell upon earth shall be taken in a great number, and the way of truth shall be hidden.
There you go, right there, to show you what's confusion. Because it says right afterwards, the way of truth shall be hidden. Just as brothers just broke down. You know what I'm saying? That hidden right there. You know, not everybody has it. The mysteries are only given to a certain cluster of individuals that the Lord called out to deserve it, which is some big stuff, by the way. You know, I still marvel at it to this day when I think about it like that, because when you look at the whole process, and you know, just hear me out, Baba Gashal, but you know, the whole process of you just, you know, being a sperm going into an egg, you had a race against millions and millions of different, you know, different combatants in a sense to race to the egg. And lo and behold, you got to the egg, and now you're sitting in this living room right now, out of all the billions of people on the earth, and the Lord made you an Israelite. And out of all the bugged out ass Israelites that we see out here, the Lord got you sitting here in this living room, learning some top shelf information from the heavens. You know, and I marvel at it still to this day greatly, and it just makes me more thankful when you think of it like that, bro, because we could be doing anything and we could be anybody. You know, the scriptures just said, many shall be taken in great number. We could have been part of that, you know? So the Lord had us here, and it also just goes to show you it was by his design. You know what I'm saying? Because you could have never made it to the egg. You know what I'm saying? You could have been Ishmael.
A lot of different circumstances could have happened.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. That's all.
It's a miracle.
It's testament that the Most High has complete dominion.
That's it.
When you think about that term, people say Almighty, they don't really think about what that word
Right.
means.
Right.
Almighty means there's no power outside of this entity. Anything that anybody could do or have is delegated
That's
by
right.
this entity.
That's
And
right.
we know that you can move in boldness and confidence because you like, can't nobody do anything unless the Lord okays it.
That's right.
You know? So what
Mhm.
you're going into is just testament, like, yo, this is the power we serve.
Yeah.
He has complete dominion and he's so complex, way further than we can go.
Mhm.
You know?
That's right. You sit back and look at it. We were celebrating holidays. That is like holidays within itself is a stumbling block to Jake. You know what I'm saying? Y'all remember waking up Christmas morning, the little butterflies you feel and shit. You know, that was a demon that was on you. And a lot of them people can't shake that butterfly demon. You know, for one day.
Recent Christmas music, man.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just a party.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, all that money and build up and hoopla, the day is over, then it's like business as usual.
Back to usual.
Hey,
With that.
now.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
you got
Yeah.
dance.
Yeah.
You gotta get everybody, you gotta get everybody a gift.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get your woman a gift, you gotta get your kids a gift, you gotta give your cousin, Larry a gift.
Man.
Your grandmama, like, you obligated to give gifts to anybody in your circle.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said, end up what?
In debt.
In debt. And then you struggling all after.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
See, Thanksgiving too.
Mm-hmm.
Same shit.
Wait for that tax return. Back
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Easter, he done this, just throwing some suits and go to church. You don't gotta spend too much money for Easter.
Right.
You know, they're subject to all these demonic things of the world, man.
That's right.
Valentine's Day, you gotta do something special with the old lady,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, man, what you said is true, bro. The Lord got brothers in the right truth. Well,
Right.
There's only one truth.
I got you though. Yeah, I know what you meant.
Because we could be sitting in IUIC right now.
We could, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Man could be sitting there looking at that asshole. Look, you know, and frog.
Yeah.
Have that demon on us, man.
Bro,
Let's get you
facts.
excited.
Believing in bubble eyes in the document he's speaking.
Yeah, bro.
What you were saying,
body, bro.
that should get you excited because it's like you could really be anywhere, but the Lord has you right
Has you
here,
here.
getting a full understanding of how to receive salvation. You could really be anywhere, but you
Yeah.
look how close you are. That should be like,
Bro, we have detailed understanding, bro.
Yeah.
It ain't just nothing minute. Like you do the Christian churches, great areas, and you know, a lot of what ifs, and not even a lot of them even agree within the doctrine. When it comes to prophecy, they obviously don't know it. So one will say, you know, Ezekiel 38 is talking about Russia. Oh, it's China, but they're all so-called Christians. You know, so we've been given a thorough, definitive understanding, detailed.
Reincarnation.
Reincarnation.
You don't understand reincarnation.
Yeah.
A lot of things in the scriptures, it's just not gonna make sense to you.
Right.
Especially concerning prophecy.
You're not
So
gonna
just
get
to
it.
have that right there,
Yeah.
man, that's far out, bro.
so the anticipation for a believer, especially if you're amongst the men that have the understanding, bro, it should be like in the world. You know how people get a scratch off and they go through and they look like they about to hit, and they're like, oh shit, I'm about to.
Yeah.
Bro, we're not about to hit for some money. We're about to hit for immortality,
Yes.
dominion, rulership, manipulation of the elements. Like, think about what we're gonna reap if we finish the course, bro.
Yeah.
An
How about this?
incorruptible.
No more having to deal no more with physical infirmities.
Right.
Right. New bodies.
Tears.
You didn't worry about getting sick. You didn't worry about what you're going to
more
get
sick.
diabetes.
Yep.
You don't worry about your blood
Doubt.
pressure being out of control. None of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
You need so much to catch a cold.
Right.
That's right. That's right. Because that's the type of shit that comes with this world that we're in right now, especially since we're closer at the end, which is exactly what this chapter is going to say through the Spirit. But it's just going to show you, you know, what chaos and what chaos has led to, you know. So yeah, what verse did you leave off on? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you was my bad. I'm sorry. My bad.
Stop.
Yeah, what verse did you leave off on, brother?
Verse 1 in 2nd Ezra 5.
Okay, cool. Read down to verse 3 and then jump to verse 43.
And the land shall be barren of faith. Verse 2, but iniquity shall be increased above that which now thou seest, and that thou hast heard long ago.
Read that again. Slide.
But iniquity shall be increased above that which now
There you
thou
go.
seest.
Salaka, really quick. It says iniquity shall be increased. All right, so there's a great number that's going to be taken. The land is going to be very barren of faith, because faith is a gift that's only given to a small group of people. And then it says iniquity shall abound. You can also find that in Matthew 24. You know, he says, for what? You know, the wickedness shall abound and the love of many shall wax cold. And when you go into that word iniquity in that verse, I believe that word in the Greek is anamonia, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it's anamonia in the Greek. And that actually goes to complete lawlessness and chaos, those perilous times, as the brother went into earlier. You know, so he's going to go into, as the, I keep almost pointing to you, but as the brother continues to read, he goes into the age of the earth in a sense. And it talks about how it was designed for the earth to wax old and the spirit to wax more corrupt as the earth is waxing old. And things are way more corrupt now versus ever. You know, I believe it's Proverbs 29 and 14. It says, when iniquity shall increase, transgression shall increase also. You know what I'm saying? So wickedness is increased beyond what even we could have imagined 10 years ago.
Right.
You know, because we knew things were going to get bad in the future, but now that we're sitting here in the future, whoa, this shit's gotten a lot more worse than I could even think to fathom. You know what I'm saying? And just to know as well that it's even going to get worse than that. We got to remember, the scripture identifies this place being likened to Sodom and Gomorrah back in the ancient world, and that was top level elite witchcraft that was happening. Remember the earth was flooded, but it was the Lord that flooded the earth in the ancient world. That was a big deal. He only saved 8 souls, and he explains what was happening in the earth in those days. And what do Yahushua say? The same thing that was happening in the days of Noah shall be happening right now, where people are giving into marriage, marrying, eating and drinking, that party and bullshit lifestyle. You know, surfeiting, as it's written of in Luke. You know, it's even mentions in Luke 21, much perplexity in that day, which goes into confusion. You know? God, Apostle.
Party and bullshit. You know, they got the songs like that.
Mm-hmm.
Party and bullshit.
Yep.
Party and so that these people, like, in their mind, but we understand because the Lord got it blinded. you're born, right? You go to school, you grow up, you get a job, and you're a slave, copper top, and then that's just life. Putty, party, and bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Going partying, drinking, partying, it's your boys,
Mm-hmm. That's
it's your
it.
girls. And then you grow old. When you get old, you can't party no more.
Right.
You get to a certain age, the partying shit is played out. But then people are looking at you like, hey, motherfucker, you 57 years old. Man. I mean, you know, even older people party, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you're talking
Different
about.
level.
That young shit.
That young shit. And then you get up into your 50s, you might still party. You go to a bar,
Right.
or you have a gathering,
Get together, yeah.
you get together in your crib, you know, like grown folk shit.
Right.
As we call it, grown folk shit. You know what I mean? But all that party, the real party, the clubs, you know, like jumping around and chasing bitches, but that's life. And then you grow older and your ass drop dead. So what did you do?
Right.
What purpose do you serve in this earth? But you're gonna find out a lot of people are really born not to serve a purpose. No, they're born to be examples.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, yeah, Apostle, as the scriptures say
Yeah.
in 2 Ezra 9:22,
I got
it says,
right here.
"Let the go ahead."
Yeah, this is
That's
2
it.
Ezra chapter 9, verse 22. It says, "Let the multitude perish then, which was born in vain, and let my grape be kept in my plant, for with great labor have I made it perfect."
Yeah. So they're born in vain. They have no meaning to their life. You know, like,
actually they do.
oh yeah,
If
right,
I'm, me myself, if
Be
I'm
burned up.
corrected what I said, no, their purpose is to die.
right.
To
God.
be examples.
That's right. That's right.
To be examples for people like us. You see, this is what happens when you're not serving the Lord.
You're right.
You die a horrible death.
That's right. If I can back you up, Apostle, so in
Yeah.
a movie, you have extras in the movie. Like when you see all those end time movies, you got people that are just running the streets getting hit by shit. You gotta have those characters
Right.
in the Lord's movie. You can't just be the main character and the antagonist. So these
That's right.
most of these people, they're just like they're the background
Yeah.
characters.
That's right.
You
That's
got
right. And that was a slip of the tongue.
Yeah, the extras.
That was a slip of the tongue for me saying they have no meaning. You know what I'm saying? Because they got to
No,
be
me
made
too.
as
I
a
said the
ransom.
same thing.
Yeah.
No, I was just correcting myself because I said it before you said it. So I said, let me stand corrected.
Gone.
But the brother said it. That's a perfect analogy.
They don't have a pivotal role within the struggle between good and evil.
That's right.
That's what they were. That's what I know.
Yeah.
We know what you
Yeah.
mean.
They're the
They don't,
extras.
yeah, they're the extras. They just don't have a. They don't have a pivotal role in the theme of the movie.
Right.
You know?
Like case in point, like that movie, if y'all remember, well, and there's so many, right? But let's go back to the main one right there, Independence Day.
Yeah.
The original.
The original was
Remember when the chariots first came?
All the people was running.
The ships first came, people were partying, and then that
Zap
one
their
super
asses down.
ship there,
Yeah.
Ooh,
I gotta go back
That's
to
a
that
solid
whole
point.
thing, you just seen people just dying,
Yeah.
right? That was beautiful.
Right there. That's it.
See, those people had to be them sacrifices.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right. And I noticed a pattern of some of y'all might have seen it. Like I see clips on social media and stuff. But it's like, you know, the different concerts and such. There's videos of demons jumping on people in them concerts.
Yeah.
You know, the recent VMA Awards that just happened a few days ago. They showed them, I think it was LL Cool J performing. It was all the goats in the background saying he's the GOAT. But when they panned the camera to the audience, there was a woman sitting there with a demonic grin on her face with her eyes open. You know, Logan, I posted in the chat. But, you know, but we've been seeing videos of that. Just, you know, different concerts and events of people in that spirit. And you see demons jumping on people's shadow beings and shit.
Oh yeah, you see shadows.
You see shadows.
Sometimes the Lord allows you to see you in your own house. Sometimes you might see shadows
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
The Travis Scott concert.
That's
man,
right.
I was saying Astroworld.
It was all those. They had ambulances out there because it was like dozens of people.
Yeah.
So like my chest, there's a heaviness in my chest. I can't breathe.
Yup.
Then they zoomed up in the video. It seemed like it was a shadow going
character.
through the
Yeah,
ground.
you seen it.
It was
You seen
on
the
video.
We did a lesson on that.
That
Yeah.
concept is very demonic.
These are for real, man.
Yup.
That goat, think about it. You said they had a bunch of real live actual goats.
No, it was just pictures of goat heads and
Goat,
everything.
in the scriptures, the goat is negative.
Right.
The goat is negative, man. The goat is, you know, as far as the scripture, and the only reason is because the goat is stubborn. The sheep are humble. Goats are proud, and you know what I mean. And when Apostle Kabbalah said this for years, when they slaughter a goat, it fights, it makes noise. When they slaughter sheep, they die humbly. You know, I mean, now the goat itself is not a wicked animal.
Right,
So
for
it's-
sure.
it's-
Understood though.
It's a lawful, righteous, and matter of fact, shit,
Symbolic.
We can eat it in the Passover.
Yeah, we can eat goat for the Passover if we chose to.
Right.
Right? But the symbolism of the characteristics of a goat. So in the scripture, they got that word, yeah, he's the goat. So that's like a satanic.
It's satanic. Yes.
But in this world, it's put up as being good.
Yeah.
Like Muhammad Ali, they say, here's the goat. That means you're the greatest of whatever you're doing.
Michael Jordan.
It's a symbol.
Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
the goat. So that even that's a demonic spell,
Yeah.
symbolism.
Yes.
That's
It's a
right.
symbol of rebellion, and even
Right.
Baphomet has the what that goat.
He
head.
a goat's head.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just when you look at just these examples that we used, you know, Yahweh Shai used that example, and we just gave some great examples to give you all a visual that's listening. But that is the state of this world right now, is what we're talking about. You know, the visions of the demons and the shadow people jumping on people. Well, this world is in that spirit. They're in control by Satan. You know, they're completely possessed. Like an Exorcist movie, the bitch spitting out the green vomit and
Oh, yeah.
spitting her head. That's these people that are out here. That's them. Anti-Messiah, as was read earlier.
So we all drive. I just got off the road. Y'all was on the road earlier. You see the way these people drive?
Yeah.
Swerving, watch the news every day. Every day. Fatal accidents. Motherfuckers are shooting people. They're shooting cops. They're
Yep.
not even scared of the cops no more.
Yep.
They're just rolling up, blowing cops away, crashing into cops.
Right.
Usually
Right.
when people see the cops, they, you know, in the old days, you see the cops, like, if you driving fast, you straight up. But now these motherfuckers is crack. They got so many demons on them, drugs, alcohol and drugs and demons on them.
Yeah.
You know, that one black woman, she crashed into a damn cop out in Fort Worth. This is like about a few weeks ago, and killed him. Crashed into the cop car. She was going the wrong way, a nigger woman. And then they showed a picture of her, man. She looked like Satan. She looked like Baphomet.
Yep.
You know, her eyes looked like black pearls. She had tattoos on her. You know, Keisha, demonic Keisha. She was all, you could see she was infested with demons.
Right.
You know, they said she was drug induced and alcohol and drug induced, but you could see that these people are good. But you see, like you said, it's a blessing for us to be here. That could be us.
Right. Right.
The Lord can have us like that out there, out here in this world,
Through.
just taking all kind of drugs, getting drunk, taking drug, alcohol induced comas, man.
Yeah. With
You know what I mean?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yep. That's it.
To the point where the people, everybody has a spirit, but these people out here, like you said, that's the Exorcist movie. You know, when you're possessed by a demon, your actual spirit is in captivity in your
Yep.
own body.
Yep.
You're not controlling your own body. The demons have actually taken over. All that shit is for real.
Yep.
Demon possession is for real, bro.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you somewhere in there, but you like in the sunken
The
place.
sunken place,
In
right.
your own
That's it.
goddamn body. Like you might be city conscious, but like in a dark place, like, yo, and the demon is actually controlling your body.
Yeah, them parasites in you, shit. No parasites in their ass. That demon.
Yeah, yeah, man.
It's like they need a host. Like that. It's like
Yeah,
parasites
demons
Yeah.
need a host.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
That's right, man. So, you said what?
I said it's like a demon driving a car. You locked in the trunk somewhere.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah,
In
cut.
the back seat.
Mhm.
The back
Yeah.
seat driver.
over here beating on the truck. Get me out! Just leaning over here, just going crazy.
Talking
Hey.
around in the back.
Yeah. That's what it is, man. You in the sunken place, like in that movie. You was in the sunken place.
Yeah.
And what was Esau trying to take their bodies
Right.
and leave them in the sunken place?
That was a
shit is
good
for real.
movie, man. I'm sorry.
Oh hell yeah, no, that's a good movie, man.
Man, yeah, that was a good movie, man.
But that's what's happening.
That's it. That's it. Hey, we just read it earlier, 2nd Ezra 5. Many shall be taken in great number. You know, that's them. They all be in control. The more they allow Satan into their lives, the stronger they get. You know?
And the ultimate sealing of the deal on their ass is when they take that mark,
That's it.
which they don't speak about.
That's it.
These camps.
Gone. Beautiful. We could jump back to that 2nd Ezra 5. You already read verse 3, right?
Verse 2.
Okay.
I'm on verse 3.
Okay.
2nd Ezra 5 and 3. And the land that thou seest now to have root, shall thou see wasted suddenly. But if the Most High grant thee to live, thou shalt see after the third trumpet that the,
Yeah, that was pretty much the point. I was verse 3. You know, the land that you see take root. Yeah, jump to 43. But, you know, the land that we see and take root, you know what I'm saying? It's gotten corrupt. Now, naturally, it was talking about the Holy Land back then. You know, but you see it right now. This land has gotten more corrupt due to wickedness. You know, so when wickedness is brought into an area, the fruits of that is going to be even more wickedness.
Right.
And we see that. You know, now we can jump down to verse 43, and we can start from that.
After you can I make a point?
Yeah, make a quick play
So
about
you
the
made,
show.
you made about the wickedness, and that's ultimately because Esau's there. Like it says, whenever Esau comes on the scene, more wickedness will abound.
Right,
You know,
right.
that's why this man's devil, he's ruling every goddamn thing. You know, he's setting up all kinds of idols, putting up all kinds of lies and different philosophies. That's why the earth is in the way that it's in right now, man, because it's being operated by the wrong rulership.
And there's demons and such that are attached to these idols that are out here. You know, they're conduits for demonic spirits. You know, so they set up, even Washington, D.C. is a giant, you know, board of just witchcraft just set up, built into a city. You know, that's another example. CVS Pharmacy, Pharmaceo. And it's a lot more of that that's actually built up than before. You know, there was, matter of fact, just really quick, something that the priest Palau had sent me a few days ago. And you brothers notice you don't even see any bells anymore. Back when we were younger, you would
Like
hear the
church
bells.
bells,
Ding, ding. You would hear it. You don't hear it no more. You don't see bells no more. Because they actually rid away negative energies and negative spirits. Even the priests in the temple had bells on their garments. You know what I'm saying? They would have it. You could hear the Levites that would, you know, they had bells. You know, so Esau even took the bells away because bells help rid evil spirits. You know, just in case brothers didn't. You know, Lord, what I posted, you know, it was on Instagram when I seen it.
You brothers, I heard the bells before. You hear things throughout the city all the time. And he did away with that.
Yep, you don't hear it no more. And they'd have them in the churches, even though we know what they represent, but still that was a place people will go to kind of get cleansed in a sense. So they don't even have the bells in there. You don't see them no more. You know, you don't hear them joints at all.
Because even when you would hear the bells, it wasn't a demonic feeling. It was something like a
Like a peace. Yeah.
type feeling when you would hear it, but authoritative though.
There, that's right.
You paid attention to it, but it was something peaceful about it.
Yeah, it would stop you on your
Things
tracks.
will kind of stop. Yeah, things will stop. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Makes
Yep.
me think about Spider-Man. Remember the movie Spider-Man with the bell would ring and
And
Venom would try
Venom,
to come out?
yeah, the symbiote would react.
Symbiotic parasite couldn't take it.
Separated.
Yeah, that's the example that's used on that video.
Yeah. Oh, wow, okay.
God, that's a spirit. But just, you know, to put that out there, you know what I'm saying? You know, them bells are spiritual. Again, the Lord had the priests that was connected to their garment, the Levites. They had bells on them.
This
You know?
new song is our bell today.
This new song is our bell today. That hey, the phone had to chime on that one.
Wow. Beep. And that was the bell sound.
Yeah, that was the bell sound. You know, beautiful. You got it, brother.
2 Ezra 5:43. So I answered and said, couldest thou not make those that have been made, and be now and that are far to come?
Because you got to remember, Ezra had a very I don't want to say it was more so a complaint, but he was very contrite on the status of Israel around that time. So he wanted the end to come bad. That way Jake wouldn't be in a jacked up state. He didn't have to see his people deal with such wickedness and such chaos. He didn't have to see that stuff no more. Matter of fact, Kahan, Baba Kishal, hold him, Wisdom of Solomon 4, and keep it locked and loaded. You know what I'm saying? But he was complaining for the state that Israel was in. So he's asking, Lord, can you just allow all these things to happen at the same time? That way you can bring the end. You know, and that obviously wasn't a wicked thought. You know, I mean, there's a very righteous man that's giving this plea. You know, but the Lord had to pretty much educate Ezra on things that had to happen in their times. You know, which is what we're talking about as we're reading this. You know, you got something you're gonna say?
Yeah, you gotta remember, Ezra see all the, he see the crack, I mean, he see everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he see all that, it made him sick in the scriptures. It
Yeah.
made him sick. So of course he was gonna plead like, hey man, is there another way
Yeah.
this could go down? You know, so he wasn't being wicked for asking that question. You know.
Yeah, because you know you got to think about it, man. Ezra was part of that group of exiles that came out of Babylon over to the land of Israel. So he's seen Jake in a low, horrible state, and then he's seen Jake in the spirit of trying when they were building and such. You know, he's seen them trying, but they were still through. You know, so his complaint and his plea, you know, the law was taken away, as you can read about that. They didn't have the thorough law around that time. So he's seen a group of people that was winging it, that was jacked up. You know, so he made a plea to the Lord, like, Lord, can you just please just speed things up? And it wasn't a wicked thing, because we asked for the Lord to hasten the days right now.
Yeah.
But in his time that he was in, it wasn't the time for it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You was going to say something too,
You
huh?
seen the heathen reigning over us. Like, man, you say you don't deal with them, but we your people, man.
Yeah.
What's up? Like, bro,
Yep.
I'm trying to overstep, but come on, man.
Yeah, like, we been feeling that way.
Yeah. Like, I feel you, but you're going to pump your brakes a little
Yeah.
bit. Things got to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see some hardcore visions.
Yeah, even the disciples felt that way when Yahweh Shai came on the scene. They like, ooh, it's the time. Yahweh Shai said, nah, not yet. That little Caesar still got to be brought out, cuz. You know what I'm saying? So say, yeah, it's the fourth beast, but, you know, the nigga got to go in chains and come back out in the end. You know, and even the Apostle Paul had thorough understanding on that, which where you get with 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. You know, 2 Thessalonians 2 is like a thorough breakdown to show Jake that was excited back then around the times to come. It's like, it's a few more things got to happen. You know, so the Apostle Paul had good understanding that more things had to happen. He knew it wasn't at his time. You know, which is why it was beautiful how the Lord chose him as that vessel to go so hard. You know, because he knew it wasn't the end. So in that time, he just had to put his head down and grind. You know?
It's like you watch a movie. It's like you watch a movie, and as you watch it, you like, how come they didn't do this, that, and the third? Like, why would they do? You know what I'm saying? But it's like at the end of the day, you gotta let the movie play out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You gotta let everything play out so that the end can come.
That's right.
You know?
Beautiful.
Continuing on, that thou mightest show thy judgment.
Just read verse 43 again. It's all good. Start from the top.
2 Ezra 5:43. So I answered and said, couldst thou not make those that have been made, and be now, and that are for to come, at once, that thou mightest show thy judgment the sooner?
There you go. So pretty much, can you bring it all at the same time? You got it. Yeah, keep going. No, I was just saying pretty much what he was saying. He's asking the Lord to bring it all at the same time.
Verse 44. Then answered he me, and said, the creature may not haste above the maker, neither may the world hold them at once that shall be created therein.
Because again, we really explained it thoroughly earlier. You know, the end had to be manifest. As we read earlier in 2 Ezra 9, the end had to be manifest. There were things that had to happen that were only set for the time of the end. The Industrial Revolution was not made to be set at 400 BC. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't made to be around that time. The Industrial Revolution was made to start at 18th century AD. You know what I'm saying? You know, the Celtics, the Vikings and such had to have their time when they were fighting against the Anglo-Saxons during the 9th and the 10th century. That way that, you know, the English words in the Bible, the English Bible that we had could be placed in there at their times. So when you can go into all this history in the past, and it was set for that design time. You know what I'm saying? Because prophecies were set for those times. The little season was already written about prior to this. You know what I'm saying? Daniel 7 was written prior to 2 Ezra 5. You know what I'm saying? So it had to play out. You know? So this was an honest plea, a sincere plea to Ezra. But as brothers say, you know, it was kind of, you know, they all had their simple moments. And the Lord had to kind of get on them. But it came from a righteous place. You know, Jacob was just ready to see the kingdom, man. He's hastening the day, just as we are. You know, but at the same time, it's that balance of understanding. And it makes sense why I was also worded, look, even Yahweh Shai don't know the hour nor the day, save the Father that's in heaven, the Heavenly Father.
Bro.
You know, so these prophecies and such have to play out the way that they are designed to play out. You know, and again, we had to be here. We were there back then. Reincarnation, as brother said, had to be thoroughly taught and brought out. We had to experience all these kingdoms too, and these captivities. You know, so the Lord had to systematically do it in his time, and it's all set up in his algorithm. Okay.
That's what the angel told Ezra in the previous chapter, chapter 4. He said
Right.
the number of seeds have to be filled in.
That's it. That's the
You know,
spirit.
but he was still pushing. But he's like, bro, you got to come back a certain amount of times, and then
Mhm.
Set measure.
It's a set measure.
It's like the year 2000 prophecy.
Right.
Like the Lord didn't bring the end in the year 2000, even though the apostles were pushing for it. You know what I'm saying? Because they wanted the end.
Right.
But if that would have happened, none of us would be standing here right now.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? But that prophecy that Yahweh Shai said that they shall seek the day of the Lord and that they ain't
Right.
gonna see it, that had to be fulfilled.
That's right. And it had to be fulfilled a few times.
Yeah.
You know, you had Jake that wanted the end when Yahweh Shai came. You don't think Jake wanted the end of the days of the Apostle Paul? A lot of these brothers wanted the end. They knew about the fourth beast that was to come up and rule. They had an idea it was the Roman Empire. But more things had to happen.
Yep.
So when Judas Maccabees came on the scene, you had people that was thinking he was the Messiah because his name was Judah. You know, but Yahweh Shai had to come on the scene a little bit afterward. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you had times in history where Jake was ready, but it wasn't the Lord's timing. You know, but now we're like, it's the Lord's timing right now where we at. You know? Another example.
what they call North Atlantic slave trade, that Jake had to totally fall and go into captivity, and that's was prophecy.
That had to happen.
You know, back then they didn't want to land in Jerusalem. They said, you guys are going to go to another captivity on these sand crackers again. And you put on boats and brought across the ocean. You know what I mean?
Solid point.
To a whole other part of the world that y'all don't even know about, you know?
Yeah. So would the earth really be able to withstand all these events that brothers are mentioning happening at the same time?
Hell no.
You know what I'm saying? All that happened in the same World War I, II, and III. Like it wouldn't. Like no, the earth needed some time to kind of recalibrate and rebalance back. You know, it couldn't happen all at the same time. You know, and plus too, it wasn't written to happen all at the same time. It had to be designed for a certain said measure, as it was quoted earlier. Man, y'all bringing out some good ass points, man. You know, Baba Gashaw, unless brothers had any more points, anything. Second Ezra 5, yes sir. Yeah, we can continue when we left off at, bro.
Verse 45. And I said, as thou hast said unto thy servant, that thou which gavest life to all, hast given life at once to the creature that thou hast created. And the creature bare it, even so it might now also bear them that now be present at once. Verse 46. And he said unto me, as the womb of a woman.
Now he's going to use the mother giving birth as another example. You got it?
And he said unto me, as the womb of a woman, and said unto her, if thou bringest forth children, why doest thou it not together, but one after another?
So he's asking a rhetorical question to Ezra, something that he has knowledge about. You know, okay, you were asking me this question about, well, can all these things happen at the same time? Well, now I want you to consider and ask the woman, hey, would you better just bury them kids at the same time? That way we don't got to have kids later?
Angel cold how he flipped
It's
that
cold
code.
how he did it. And Yahweh Shai would do that all the
can
time.
understand it too.
Yeah.
Like something plain,
Yep.
you know.
He would always use carnal examples. You know what I'm saying? That's what dope thing. Well, we got to experience the flesh, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because we can relate to these carnal examples about what the Lord is saying spiritually.
That's right.
You know, so yeah, you got it, bro.
Verse 46. And he said unto me, ask the womb of a woman, and say unto her, if thou bringest forth children, why doest thou it not together?
She look at you like you was crazy. I don't just have all the kids at the same time. The woman's gonna be like, man, what are you talking about? Shoot, they ready to squeeze your hand off after one giving birth to one child. You know, you got it.
But one after another. Pray her therefore to bring forth 10 children at once.
Go ahead.
And I said, she cannot, but must do it by a distance of time.
There you go. So he after that, you know, he thoroughly understood what the angel was saying. Ah, dang, you know, that's a good point. Yeah, a woman can't have all these kids at the same time. So the Lord ain't gonna allow all these prophecies to happen at the same time. You know, they were set for their time that was designed. You know? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, she can't have twins at the same time. They still have to be like a minute apart, 5 minutes apart, or whatever.
Yeah.
They both can't just slide.
To the no. You push 2 babies out, 2 other babies to C-section. She be dead in a mug afterward.
That fit through.
Through. You got it.
Verse 48. Then said he unto me, even so Then said he unto me, even so have I given the womb of the earth to those that be sown in their times.
And you can keep reading all the way to the end of it.
Okay. For like as a young child may not bring forth the things that belong to the age, even so have I disposed the world which I created.
Yeah, so things had to happen in their time. You know, Noah in their day before the flood. You know what I mean? Jake was in a pure, potent state. Jake was a little taller. Well, it was taller, stronger, more sharp. You know what I'm saying? And in the days of King David and such, all those events had to happen all the way to Yahweh Shai, which segues to right now. You know, and then, you know, he uses the example of a child being brought up to a mother in youth versus a child being born to a woman in her 40s or 50s or geriatric pregnancy. And even the condition of them children ain't the same. You know, you got children that come out with more of a youthful parents. That child more than likely is going to be more lively, you know, be able to correlate things faster, a little more sharper. Health might be a little better. But then you have parents that might be in their 40s and 50s and have a child. That child, you know, you got certain special cases that are out there. But a lot of times a child ain't really as healthy when they come out from a union of older people. You know, so we're like those children now that came out of a union of older people, which is why we're smaller, we're a lot more frail, a lot more sicklier. The food that we eat is jacked up and
It
toxic.
really is the woman. It really is on the woman.
That too.
A younger woman. It really got nothing to do with the father.
Con, you right. You right.
It's because the father's
That geriatric birth.
Right.
60 years old, but you're gonna get a young girl. It's the girl. It's the girl that decides all that.
True that.
womb
True that.
carries that seed.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even Joseph was older. Yeah, the water for that. Absolutely.
When it comes as far as childbirth,
Yeah.
all that falls on the woman.
Con.
The man, because men are stronger than women anyway.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with us. Well, I'll say this: if you got a degenerate man, and his the dude with degenerate DNA, you know, like these GMO babies. Why you think it's all crazy out here, man? With these little GMO and Keisha and Big Shirley running around. If you got degenerate people making these babies, so of course their kids gonna be a little lucky.
Con, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah, the water for
They
that.
young,
Yeah.
They all young. You got these little young jokers popping, but they're young, but the kids are still gonna be degenerates.
Mm-hmm.
You dig? But
Got it.
you know, if you get somebody that's a good stock, you know, a good stock, the man, especially a woman too, the baby will come on her up. It don't matter how old the daddy is.
Right.
Look,
Yeah.
man, men could reproduce into their 80s.
Yep.
You know, really, men could reproduce up until they die. Up until you die, man. Like supposedly in this kingdom, like around, they say the average person died in the 70s or 80s. They could pop a 20-year-old girl or an 18-year-old girl, the baby gonna be fine. Especially if that man is a good stock and you know he's older. Like that's one thing about it. But as far as health and that man, you know, it's the woman. If you get to a, you know, like I said, an older woman, you might have problems.
You're going to have problems with an older woman, right?
Yeah, man, because yeah, man, because girls are supposed to have babies young.
Mm-hmm.
Remember years ago they talk about these young girls popping out. They're supposed to be popping babies out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're supposed to start popping them out from 12. I don't know if they're gonna call us pedophiles again, but I don't know what the scriptures say.
Right.
From 12 to 13, 14, that's when their bodies are the healthiest.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when you're gonna get healthy babies.
That's when they start their period.
Yeah.
You know, their body starts creating eggs and disposing
So
them.
they gonna pop out one baby, and then next month get pregnant. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Look at the old days. Families were big,
Mm-hmm.
right? Families, man, my some people talking about, yeah, man, I had 10 brothers and 4 sisters, and here in the South, especially, you know what I mean? Them Drakes was get popping the woman, and that woman, they were popping them babies out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Look at the North. Ephraim. They say Ephraim is fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
The
Fruitful
Puerto
book.
Ricans, man, come on. Man, they large families.
Mm-hmm.
Because them women be popping them babies out, man. Like almost like taking a dump. Right? Boom. Okay, then an hour later you have to go again. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, well, to the point, what you're saying, how everything is messed up.
Yeah. The water for that too. Yeah, because that's just written over. You know, it talks about the earth being like a woman.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So the older the earth gets, like the woman, you know, the more the fruit that comes out of it is a little more docile in a sense. You know what I'm saying? Slow to register stuff.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned that they're having a term for. It's called geriatric
pregnancy.
So that's what the earth is doing right now. Which I'll read the definition real quick.
For sure.
The term geriatric pregnancy is outdated, and most healthcare providers now use the term advanced maternal age.
Yeah, and they try to change it. It's just after Kevin Samuels, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? They try to change it to advanced. You know, it's not an advanced thing. You ain't on a higher level if you're able to do it. It's more of a degenerate thing, if anything.
Right.
You know, but women are supposed to have children when they're younger.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Well, he was telling them that.
Mm-hmm.
Which he got that from the Bible.
Yep.
Which a lot of his dialogue he got from probably watching us.
Mm-hmm.
But he was trying to take it and just curve it to his
Right.
purposes,
His platform.
whatever.
Yep.
You dig what I'm saying? But he was right. The Bible tell you that. You know what I mean? But that's why the world is so effed up, man, and degenerate. Because you got a bunch of degenerates, unhealthy people to begin with, degenerates having babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So these little young kids are unhealthy. I didn't heard about motherfucking 18-year-old kids having heart attacks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
LeBron's
Heart
son.
problems, man.
After that juicy juice.
Yep.
LeBron James' son, he damn near had a heart attack on the basketball.
And he's a collegiate, he's an NBA athlete now. He had a heart attack.
Well, that jumped, the
Jump
percentages,
shot, though.
the percentages of that jumped up after 2020 when people
See?
were taking that stuff.
Yep.
You know, so,
Jump shot.
yeah.
This refers to pregnancies where the birthing person is 35 years or older at the estimated delivery date. While pregnancies at this age are associated with an increased risk of complications, most healthy people who get pregnant after age 35 have healthy babies. Some risk factors associated with the advanced maternal age include miscarriage, fetal chromosomal abnormalities, gestational diabetes, preterm birth, stillbirth, and cesarean delivery.
Yeah. So it's a lot of, it's high risk pregnancy.
High risk pregnancy, yeah.
So you look at that again, looking at the condition of the earth and the age of the earth. The earth is bearing fruit right now, but it's very high risk. You know what I'm saying? The stuff that comes out ain't as potent as it was back in the earlier days of the earth. You know what I'm saying? And we said it, I believe it was, I can't remember where it was. I think it was a camp afternoon day. But pretty much we said, you bring out your forefathers and put them on a time machine to right now, especially before the flood. The sons of God, if they was to get in the time machine and look at right now, one, they be looking down at us because we small as hell. And they be like, man, hell to the no, I'm going hell back, man. Forget that. You know what I'm saying? Because how corrupt shit's gotten.
They be ready to put people to death.
Yeah, they be ready to put people to death.
Out here be judging.
But the unique thing about it is, everybody likes an underdog story. Because now you got the weak ones that are in a position of victory and winning. You know what I'm saying? That's why the end of a boxing match is so much more exciting than the beginning of it. Because in the beginning of it, you full of your energy, you kind of feeling your opposition out. But in the last few rounds, those are the championship rounds. When you're tired, drained.
That's the most intense part.
Yeah.
Of the fight. And the 12th, especially if both fighters make it to the 12th, the rock and sock and fight, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
You know, the edge of your seat now, you're going, especially your favorite, you want to know if he's going to pull it off.
Yeah.
Or he can get knocked out and let the other. You know what I mean?
That's right. The earth is in the 12th round right now, man. According to the Bible. We're going to pull that out too. But according to the Bible, it's the last round, the last few seconds of the last round, man.
Verse 50.
Yep. And keep reading all up to the end of it.
2 Ezra 5 and 50.
How many verses in it?
56.
Okay, cool.
2 Ezra 5 and 50. And I asked and said, seeing thou hast now given me the way, I will proceed to speak before thee. For our mother, of whom thou hast told me that she is young, drawing now nigh.
Talking about the earth. Okay. The earth, and now it's old. Go ahead.
He answered me and said, ask a woman that beareth children, and she shall tell thee. Say unto her,
Ask your mama. Go ahead.
wherefore are unto they whom thou hast thou
Read it again.
Salaki. Say unto her, wherefore are unto they whom
Yeah, just slow down.
Slow down and read.
You're a good reader. Just slow down. You're a good
say
reader
unto
though.
her, wherefore are unto they whom maybe mine saying that.
Oh, it's not in the after?
Yeah, mine
I'm reading like this.
Yeah, some said now.
Okay, so you on point then. You on point.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and ours
ours
says where
yeah,
art
ours
not
said
thou.
not.
It
Okay.
says that the word not.
Dang translations, man.
I'm
No.
on
Yeah.
the phone. Let me check.
Yeah, just go with the flow, brother. You a good reader, bro. I trust your judgment.
Hey, good, listen, man.
Yeah.
It's the first
Say
time
unto
we
her,
have
That's crazy.
wherefore are unto they whom
First time in the
thou
big
hast
Okay.
now brought forth like those that were before, but less of stature.
So it's saying those that are brought forth later are less in stature. All right. So if a woman is older, high risk pregnancy, the child is going to be of lower stature, not as healthy, not as sharp, and that's naturally. This is biology. You got it.
Verse 53. And she shall answer thee that they, Salakia, that, and she shall answer thee, they that be born in the strength of youth are one fashion.
Yeah, the Nephilim, you know what I'm saying? There were giants in the earth in those days, which, you know, are just renowned men, you know, but you're sharper, you're bigger, you know what I'm saying? It's different, you know, go ahead.
And they that are born in the time of age, when the womb fell it, or otherwise.
Now that's us. You know, we're different. We ain't the same as our fathers back then. Remember back in the ancient world, that cluster of grapes was huge, and it took 2 men to carry it back then. Probably take about 5 to 6 cats to carry that same cluster today. You know, we ain't the same as we was back then in the flesh, but through the spirit.
I'm trying to cut you again. The grape was probably like this.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm talking about, we eating grapes and little things like this. I mean, it's good as hell.
Yeah.
To us anyway. But that cluster of grapes, it took what, 2 strong men?
Took 2 men.
Of grape, and you said it earlier in the lesson. We were bigger back then. Talk about some goddamn who's like world champion, you know, dudes like that, Shaq, and people like that, these tall guys.
Yeah.
Talk about Andre the Giant, and all this, man. Come on, man. Them guys were considered little guys in the ancient world.
In the ancient world, yes.
Yeah, there was more nutrients in the food.
Yeah.
The atmosphere was less polluted.
Yeah.
There was more oxygen going into your especially before the flood. More oxygen going into your lungs, so more vibrant.
Yeah,
We was in that atmosphere. We call it disintegrate.
oh, we died. We survived. It'd be like us being out of space right now. Our lungs would collapse or explode. Like I said, a grape like this size, probably more than likely that was a grape. So for you to hold that grape, you didn't hold it with 2 hands. Because we had to be bigger, man. Shit, man. But imagine the size of an apple.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, there was a video I seen of some archaeologists, and they believe that they found pretty much the grave site of Noah's wife and everything. And, you know, something that I seen, but it pretty much pulled up a toe bone. Like the middle part of the toe bone, and that mug was the size of a fist. The size of a normal person's fist.
So
You know, it was different. So they say.
How would they know where she was buried?
Right.
Just like they said, they found the grave of Yahushua, who they call Christ. First of all, you ain't gonna, he wouldn't have no
Yeah, you
grave.
wouldn't find a grave. Yeah.
That body was ascended.
Right, exactly.
That body, the Most High got that body preserved somewhere.
Right.
You know?
For sure, for
So
sure.
there is no grave of the Messiah.
Right.
And furthermore, that was 2,000 years ago. Anybody who died back then, those bones would be dust.
Ah, you right. You right.
Would be dust.
Yeah, bones are
Unless
biodegradable. You right. Yeah. Facts. Solid point. Well, you know, right back to it.
2 Ezra 5 and 54. Consider thou therefore also how that ye are less of stature than those that were before you.
So we're smaller than they were. You know, even the tallest guys you think of today. You know, Victor Wembanyama, who's 7'4". He was a smaller guy compared to those in the ancient world. You know, but it's going into
like kids.
Yeah.
If you took Shaq and put him in the ancient world, he'd be like the size of men. He would look like
he looked like him
compared to us in here.
Real talk.
You took Shaq and you put him, he'd be like this little brother to us. And just look at him, hey man, where's your father, boy? If you could transfer Shaq back to the time of King David.
Yep. Man, there was a beloved brother that had a dream that he seen. This was a while ago, man. That he seen the Lord, and he said in that dream he wasn't even up to his waist. He said he might have passed by his knee a little bit, and that was a dream he had. Just to give you that visual, man. Like when we get them bodies, man, it's gonna be more stature than it was back then.
And
but
our
just to
women
get,
gonna be big too.
you said what?
The women gonna
Yeah, everybody gonna be big. Yeah.
But it's not gonna be weird. Oh yeah, the Lord gonna do that. Yeah, the heathen ain't gonna be on our, they gonna be a little smaller, so we don't bully them around.
Yep. You got it.
2 Ezra 5 and 55. And so are they that come after you less than ye, as the creatures which now begin to be old.
Now this was written roughly, you know, according to Esau's, you know, how he divides times. This was written about the 4th or 5th century BC. You know, so roughly around close to 3,000 years ago, 2,500 something odd years ago. And he said even around that time they were of less stature. So he said even those that come afterwards shall even be more weak than you are. So that right there is talking about us. So he's even saying Ezra back then was on a complete different level of stature, you know, of health and everything, you know, versus us today. You know, Go ahead.
Hey,
have passed over the strength of
you only
you.
got your one brother.
Then said I,
One sec.
I don't know if you remember, even you, y'all bring up top plenty of times. Did we ever bring y'all, the apostles and elders, did we ever bring y'all to the Cloister Museum up there in New York? You know, it's an old medieval, actual medieval castle that they transferred.
No, we didn't go to the
We never, all these years, we never brought
We went to
we went to the
DC,
Cloisters.
we went to Stanford, we went to DC.
Man, okay,
No, it was what, Yale? Was that
okay.
Yale we had went to?
I could have sworn we brought y'all to the
But
Cloisters.
y'all did us filming at the Cloisters.
Y'all
See,
filmed
we
there?
We wasn't there though.
Oh, okay,
We
okay.
wasn't there.
Anyways, the Cloisters Museum is not the Bronx. It's right on the borderline. It's like that Upper Manhattan. We used to speak out there. We used to go there years ago. It's an actual, from the Dark Ages, which you know that was Jake. That was us. It's an actual museum. Beautiful and awesome place.
The Met is dope too.
Yeah, the Met is
The
cool.
first time we came to New York, me and Ellen,
Oh yeah,
we
yeah.
went to the Met.
Oh no, the Met is bad.
Yeah, the Met is dope.
But the Cloisters is another level.
The Cloisters is better
I
than the
already
Met.
I'm not gonna say better, but it's different, man.
Yeah, I guess it's different.
When
Yeah.
you walk in there, it's an actual
We just ended off on this
authentic
one right here.
medieval
No, second and
castle
14. Gotta end it off.
that they said they brought it over
That was
somehow,
the
brick
most
by
point of the
brick,
lesson.
put it right back together, and they got all the artifacts in there from the men of that time. And when you walk in this one corridor, you could tell that the people, and this is the Dark Ages, they were giants then too.
Yeah, they were
Because
tall.
when you walk
Yeah.
in the door is like a huge door, and there was a dresser, a fucking, like some of this dresser belonged to one of the knights or kings. They put it like this, you see, from that wall right there, from the floor to the ceiling, that was the top of the dresser.
Oh, so it's massive.
Yeah, and you could tell it was a dresser. It was
Jake was tall.
like, yo.
Yeah.
And they had suits of armor, and there was one suit of armor they had it behind the cases, you know how it be when you go to the museum. And the dude whose ever suit of armor that was, he had little images of himself embroidered in his armor. And as you can see, it was a straight up black dude with an afro. Straight up Jake, it looked like the image of Yahweh Shai. And he was a knight. And that was his suit of armor. You could clearly see when you go there that those were the Jakes.
Yeah.
At the Met, you've been to the Met though, right?
The Met's
Huge, man. Oh, the weapons, their swords,
You would love
their
that.
battle axes. Brother, these things are giant. They don't look like something we would use
Y'all
today.
should go to the Met.
Okay.
I would rather say,
And
man,
Cloisters. I want to go to Cloisters.
Lord willing, if the Spirit got it where, all of us take a collective trip back up, we gotta go.
I love that.
We gotta go to the Cloisters. You gotta go. You got to go. We used to speak in front of the Cloisters at one point. But prior to that, the Apostle Tahar used to always bring us there back in the 90s. Happy Sorry I used to come with us sometimes and film. Yeah, man. But like just backing up what you said.
Yeah, no, the water for that.
And that
Yeah.
right there, that's like what, 1,000 years
Yeah.
ago. During the time of the knights and the
Sheesh.
medieval times.
Absolutely.
So from that time to now, Jake, people human
Shrunk like a
beings-
motherfucker. Damn.
Human beings shrunk.
You know, the water for that. Shit, the water. Yeah, I didn't know
That's why
that.
I brought it up. Like I could have
Yeah.
sworn we had brought y'all to the questions, but I'm like, damn, I guess we never got the chance. But if you go to New York, that's a museum. The Met, like the Elder Ariada said, that's fire too.
Okay.
If you was to go into, which all of us in here should be, anybody in geometry should
Yeah, you into that.
be into stuff like that. That's research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. The water.
You know what I mean?
Cool. And we can
to the Ross Perot Museum that's out here.
No.
You would love
yeah.
it.
No, I haven't.
We can end off on that. We'll end off on that 2nd Ezra 14. We'll read. That's pretty much it on that one. That's pretty much the point. We'll end it off on 2nd Ezra 14 and start at verse like 12.
Second Ezra, chapter 14, verse 12. And it reads,
Here, read up a little. Like project your voice a little more, bro.
this is Second Ezra, chapter 14, and verse
And
12.
start at 9. Excuse me. Sorry.
This is Second Ezra 14 and 9. And it reads, for thou shalt be taken away from all, and from henceforth thou shalt remain with my son, and with such be like thee.
There you go. So that's going into the gathering that's going to happen in the end of the world. The angel of the Lord is telling Ezra, look, you're going to be taken away from all, and you're going to be gathered with those that are like you in the very end. What shows you reincarnation 1, And it's what? That the Lord has those that are with Yahweh Shai collectively together at the very end of the world. Just as the scriptures talks about that great gathering that's to take place. You know, that's what that verse is talking about. Meeting up on YouTube and everything like that to what we see here today. Okay, go ahead.
Until the times be ended. This is verse 10. For the world has lost its youth, and the times begin to wax old.
Just as we read in 2 Ezra 5. The world, 2 Ezra 5 tells you how the world lost its youth, and he gives you a very detailed explanation of how. All right, so we have a thorough understanding of that now. Go ahead.
This is verse 11. For the world is divided into 12 parts, and the 10 parts of it are gone already.
Now this is the point right here, because it says the world is divided into 12 parts. That right there is showing you, it's giving you a timeline of the planet Earth. It's not going into sections of the Earth like pie, but it's going into the time frame of the Earth's life. I think it was you earlier that quoted it earlier. A day of the Lord is 1,000 years. It's either you or Tazamah. You know, so the Earth is roughly, you know what I'm saying, designed to be about 12,000 to 13,000 years. You know, until the end comes, pretty much. You know, go ahead.
And half of a 10th part.
So it said in the days of Ezra, the 10th part is already a past, and even the half of the 10th part. Now this was 2,500 years ago saying that. So if the earth is divided into 12 parts, and in the days of Ezra, which is between the 4th and the 5th century BC, it was already 10 and a half parts that was already passed. And you fast forward to right now, hello, you clearly see where we at right now. Like, if it's divided in, does that make sense? Does that make sense to you, Kevin?
Yeah, it makes a lot.
Yeah, if the earth is divided into 12 parts, in the days of Ezra, 10 and a half parts was passed, then it's like, I mean, what else can you say and do? You know what I'm saying? That verse right there clearly shows you, like, if you an Israelite and you bugging the fuck out right now, you just meant to be a bugged out ass Israelite. You know, because we in the last few nanoseconds of that day. You know, especially since the last days technically started since Yahweh Shai was on the scene. We're in the last few moments, says this verse. Go ahead.
This is verse 12. And there remaineth that which is after the half of the 10th part. Verse 13. Now therefore set thine house in order, and reprove thy people. Comfort such of them as be in trouble, and now renounce corruption.
This is the main job. This is what we need to be doing right now. And it don't matter if you got a butthurt Israelite that's out here saying it's too mean. Y'all shouldn't be getting on Jake like this. No, we're in the time right now for pussyfooting. We at the end. You know, so if you ain't gonna get it, you ain't gonna get it. You know what I'm saying? But we got a job we gotta do. Especially since we know what time it is. Just as we read earlier, little children, ye shall know that in the last time an antichrist shall come. Well, now little children, there are many anti-messiahs that come. For it is the last time. So we're in the last moment of the last time right now. And hopefully this lesson here, this class brought everything full round in retrospect to give the audience, you know, ammunition to really just be on point. Especially since we know what time it is. You know, because we closer than we even believe. As it was read earlier in Romans 13 and 11.
Right.
You know, so that verse right there really shows you how close we are to the end. You know, so hopefully, you know, the point was made. I believe it was made through the Spirit. Hopefully it was edifying. A lot of beautiful points was brought out through the Spirit. We're going to end it off on that. We want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory to
Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash.
Double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone that do rule well through the Holy Spirit. Peace, blessing, and salutations to you elect throughout the four winds of this earth, fulfilling your lots, your portions as well, in sincerity and in truth. Shalom.
Shalom.
Good, yeah.